will take roughly 3 hours and 15 to 3 hours and 45 minutes. That is based on a 30-minute episode.
Welcome to the Soundboard with Tofe podcast. To the industry leaders and forward-thinking companies, this is your resource to become a better podcaster. You'll be taken on a journey to learn tips and tricks around podcast strategy, editing, and curation. And here's your host, Tofe Evans.
Welcome back to the Soundboard with Tofe podcast. I'm your host, Tofe, and we are up to episode 27. It is mainly about how long does it actually take to edit an episode from start to finish. The main reason I wanted to do this episode is for all the people that think editing doesn't really take that long or is ignorant and have no idea on what happens in the back end. So let's use the example of a 30-minute episode, of a 30-minute recording. So how long would that actually take to complete from start to finish? Now, I've broken this up into 3 different categories. The editing alone contains several elements. Everything from listening to the podcast recording from start to finish, identifying any unnecessary ums and you-knows. Then there's seeing any edits where the person is stumbling over themselves and chopping and cleaning that up. Then there's any sort of audio optimization. There might be a noise gate added to remove any frequency of a fan. There's adding all the intros, the outros, any sort of plugs. What I usually do is times it by 3. So if it's a 30-minute episode, I would give it an hour and a half, mainly because of listening from start to finish. There's a lot of pausing, there's a lot of trimming, a lot of cutting, a lot of thinking. So that's an hour and a half already. The next thing is curation. So we've gone from editing, now we're going into curation. Curation is the process of chopping things up into micro content. It's about repurposing so that we can utilize the podcast in more than one way. You could have an episode out, but you could also have a blog that is transcribed from it, which I've used in a previous episode if you want to check that out. I think it was episode 24. Then we could have video content to go out on social media. Then we can use an excerpt that is used as image content to go on Instagram and Twitter. There's so much that can be done with that. In this case, based on curation, we're using the example if we're going to do one piece of video content or an audiogram, as well as one piece of image content. Depending on how streamlined you have this, because you may have a template that you use or you may change it up every time. I usually give this it can take roughly an hour to hour and a half. Reason being is because if you want to use a really juicy part from the episode, something that you know is going to get someone's attention, then that's the part that's going to take a lot of time. So I usually give it an hour to hour and a half, and that is based on one video or one audiogram, especially if it's audio only, and one image content. And then the third category is the copy and the show notes. Depending on how well the person is at writing, I usually give this roughly 45 minutes. And depending on what platforms it's going on, because if you're writing content for TikTok, it's going to not take you that long. And TikTok only gives you 150 characters as opposed to something on LinkedIn. And if it's going on your blog as well. So I usually say 45 minutes. Look, give or take, it could take 30, it could take 15, but I'm giving a rough estimate. Now, based on those 3 categories between editing, so I said roughly an hour and a half, curation, so an hour to an hour and a half, and the copy and show notes, which is roughly 45 minutes, the grand total of that will take roughly 3 hours and 15 to 3 hours and 45 minutes. That is based on a 30-minute episode. Hopefully that puts things into perspective. There aren't that many elements involved, but that takes a lot of time. And that's where podcasters get really stuck. They feel like all it is this massive time-consuming thing. All they want to do is record the episodes, but they don't have the time to do all the editing and the curation. So what I would recommend is outsourcing that. it's finding a freelancer or it's hiring someone for your team. But I am going to put a cheeky, shameless plug and put myself in there too. This is what I do for a living. I do podcast editing and strategy and curation. So if this is something that you want a hand with, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to give a free initial consult if it's something that we can see ourselves working together. And to save you a lot of time, I'm talking hours, then this could be a really good investment for you so that you can only focus on the recordings and the engagement with your audience and have all the back-end stuff pretty much taken care of. If there's something that you're interested in, feel free to swing me a DM. I'll also put my email in the show notes and we can continue the conversation there. Anyway, I hope that brings context for you on how long it actually takes to edit an episode. If this was something that you found valuable or you know of someone that would find interest in this, please share the episode with them. And I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening, and for more information about Soundboard services, please check out the show notes. Lastly, Soundboard acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, paying respects to elders past, present, and emerging.